Hi, good, you're here. I am so excited. Guess what? I hope this isn't about your podcast again. Why, did you finally listen to it?
Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. The Groomer Next Door production. You're listening to BYOTP Radio. Coming up next, the Groomer Next Door.
Hello, pups and kittens, and welcome to another fun-filled episode of The Groomer Next Door. I'm your host, Chris Green, and this is episode 180. So close to that elusive milestone of 200, and yet seems like it's going to be so far away. Kind of weird. This week, we are going to be joined by a very intelligent lady, somebody who has dedicated the last 2 decades into learning everything there is about pet food. I could spend the rest of my life studying everything she studied, continuously ask her questions, and I feel like I will never come as close to the knowledge that she has. Her name is Susan Thixton, and she has a website called truthaboutpetfood.com and also Association for Truthinpetfood.com. She will be joining us in just a moment, and I was just absolutely enthusiastic to be able to sit down and talk to her. Just the idea that there's no transparency in our pet food shocks me. And for that, you got great ladies like Dr. Royal, Dr. Becker, Susan Thixton, who are out there advocating for this. And most of us don't know it. Most of us don't realize that these people are trying to make a difference and hold the big pet food companies' feet to the fire. And that's what I'm so grateful to be able to put her on this podcast and send this out across the whole globe, and in hopes that we all kind of can open up discussion about it. So let's go into the fact of the week. Now, last week we had some technical difficulties, so I'm going to read that one in just a moment. But for this week, bloodhound dogs have a keen sense of smell and have been used since the Middle Ages to track criminals. And they're really cool looking dogs too. I mean, just gonna say. So, as I had mentioned, we had a little bit of technical difficulties. I don't know what happened, but anyway, what I'm going to do is I'll read last week's as well. Dog nose prints are as unique as human fingerprints and can be used to identify them. So, next time you look at your fingerprints and you look at your dog's nose, well, you're going to realize, hey, it's the same thing almost. Well, with that said, let's dive into the Weekly Roundup.
The Weekly Roundup. Yeehaw.
Couple things I wanted to mention. About a week ago, Bagheera, our 3-legged black cat, was adopted to a really amazing family who is going to love Bagheera. And right away, Bagheera loved them. So this long, treacherous recovery from a cat who was hit, tried to be rehabilitated with that deformed arm and muscular problems, hoping that it would just fuse back together, which did not. And amputation and rehabilitation, has fully recovered and found his forever home. So we're sad to say goodbye, of course. I mean, we've had Bagheera for about 9 months, and we've seen him through the pain and the joys. And now we get to see him with this little cat smile on his face, going off to a forever home. And that is the most rewarding story that I think I can ever have in any one of our rescues. And then, of course, when there's one that goes, more tend to follow. We were notified by a friend of ours over at the Ozark Actors Theater about a little kitten that was over by a coffee house right here in town. They thought the cat was going to be a little bit younger than what projected to be. I can honestly say Sarah and I were very happy to find out that it did not need to be bottle fed. It was old enough to actually eat soft food on its own, and did not need the bottle, but we still put the formula in because we're not entirely sure if it had all of its nutrients. So we're making sure that it's high in its vitamins and intake. And Giddy is his name, or her name for that matter, and she's been doing absolutely amazing. And then, of course, we took in 3 other ones. They were all approximately around the same age as Giddy by maybe 2 weeks, 3 at the most. They accepted her into their little pack, and Giddy and 3 amigas, because they're all girls, they've all become best of friends as if they were littermates. It is a lot of fun to watch this every day over at the shop because they come with us, they play, people get to see them, they get to interact with dogs, which is always a good thing. Just in case they're adopted to a family that have dogs, they're not going to be afraid of them. They're able to hear all these different noises that go on in the shop, so they're not going to be afraid of sound, and they're loved on constantly. So, these guys will be available for adoption probably end of July. They will be spayed in the coming weeks because they are of weight and of age. So that's going to be great. They will have full vaccinations. And all of this is all possible because of Phelps County Animal Welfare League, which Sarah is the president of. These are all great things, and hopefully we'll be able to get them adopted out very soon because I'm pretty sure there is a cat or dog in need of our house, of our abilities, and of our love that need us very soon. So that's the kind of the whole story of what's been going on lately. And now I think we have a knock at the door.
Oh, hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
This week we are joined by Susan Thixton. She is with truthaboutpetfood.com. She's going to tell us a lot of great stories, has a lot more to go on. So with that said, thank you very much for joining us this week.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure. Now, as I said before we started, I typically would have a great deal of questions, but you know what? I don't think I actually have to have them. So I'm going to ask just a few things, and I'm just going to listen to you because you are just nothing but knowledge, and I enjoy that. I get to learn from you, and I really appreciate that. So I always start out with everybody, and I want to know the origin story, how you got started, what drove you to this direction, how did all of this begin?
Well, about 25 years ago, and this dates me, which isn't a good thing, but about 25 years ago, I was a dog trainer and owned a dog and cat boarding facility. And my soulmate dog, she was just my heart dog, almost overnight, a tumor appeared on her pelvic bone. My vet, who went to school with Dr. Wysong, that started Wysong Pet Food, so my vet knew more than most veterinarians today even know about pet food, said that the tumor was more than likely caused, it was cancer, and was more than likely caused by a commonly used chemical preservative in pet food that's used to extend the shelf life. The preservative was a Thixton, which is still used today. I was horrified. I didn't even know what shelf life really meant back then. So I called the pet food company. This was the number one pet food in the country at the time. I made my first phone call to a pet food company and just asked them how long the food would stay fresh. And they very proudly told me that food would stay fresh for 25 years. Mm-hmm. And I was horrified. I mean, it makes Twinkies look like health food. And it changed me. My dog had to be put down. To have that feeling of you bought this pet food and you put it in their bowl, which caused their death. It changes you forever. And that vet loaned me books. This was before the internet. He loaned me books, and I read everything when the internet started growing and you could read papers and so forth. I started doing that. And about 10 years ago, a group of friends, I will bend someone's ear on pet food at any chance I get. Some friends went, you need to start a website and you need to tell this on a website. And I went, well, okay, yeah, good point. And Truth About Pet Food was born. A couple years in, consumers, the AFCO regulatory meetings happened to be here in my area, and consumers said, you need to go. And I basically volunteer for a living. I didn't even have the money to be able to pay admission to go. They donated the money for me to go, and that started my advocacy work, basically representing consumers at these regulatory meetings and with FDA. And I've been going now for 8 years. It took me a while. AFCO was the first meeting. They were, oh, welcome, a consumer representative. We love consumers. But then when I started asking the uncomfortable questions and, being that thorn in their side, then they weren't too happy with me. And it took several years for me to gain advisory position on pet food related committees. But now I have that. They're still not real happy with me, but they get a little more accepting. Some of the individuals at AFCO are more accepting than others, but I'm there regardless. So whether they like me or not.
Well, but you know what? I've noticed that once you get on any one of their, whether it's the big box or big pet food product companies' website or radars, or you get on AFCO's radar, even any of them, PFI, if you get on their radar for pet food, any of these people's radars that are there to mislead the consumer. Once you get on it, they don't like you. And it's really easy to get onto their radar. The moment you start to say, hey, you know what, there's a problem, you're on it. And they talk to each other.
Their trade associations, PFI, which is Pet Food Institute, another very, very powerful trade association is AFIA, American Feed Industry Association, which many pet food manufacturers are members of. When I first started going to AFCO meetings, the representatives of AFIA, and they're smart, sharp people, they're good. Mm-hmm. They would about complete the sentences of regulatory. It was horrifying how much AFCO members relied on AFIA more than any of the other ones for everything. And I was horrified, and I've called them out on that on numerous occasions, and that's changed somewhat. But it's a huge battle. This has been going on for 50, 60 years, and it isn't going to change overnight, but we're making some strides.
Maybe before, I would say probably before Pet Food came out, before your website came out, you're right. This is the norm, and this is what would have been acceptable. But now that all this has actually started to just roll, there's no other choice. They're having to answer for it a lot more now than ever. Something that I find to be absolutely appalling is how the big pet food companies sit on these regulatory boards, and they're the ones who are making the rules. Why is that?
Well, they don't get a vote. It's only regulatory, State Department of Agriculture and FDA that votes. They are advisors in the same way that consumer members are advisors. But A lot of these meetings go on in between the big public meetings, and I'm involved in those meetings too. And I can tell you that they do have a great deal of influence.
Yeah.
They have a lot of money behind them. You know, where I'm running several websites on these meetings, writing posts, you know, doing all these other things. They have individual members that deal strictly with AFCO issues or one aspect of AFCO issues. So they have a lot of money behind them, and are very, very prepared, are very, very influential. But we are gaining on it. I am not allowed, one of the limitations they put on consumer advisory committee members, I cannot share anything that's discussed in these little in-between time meetings with consumers.
Right.
Industry, on the other hand, is allowed to go back to their members and discuss things. But I'm not allowed to do that. So, you know, going in, I'm at a disadvantage because I would like to get consumer input, feedback on things, and AFCO won't allow me to do that. Some members of AFCO do, some do not. One thing that I'm on right now, they are updating pet food labels.
Mm-hmm.
After the 2007 pet food recall, Congress developed laws called the Federal Food and Drug Administration Amendments Act. It was a lot of human food laws and as well some pet food laws. And the pet food laws were to update information on labels so that consumers knew more of what they were buying, and to update all pet food ingredients with a standard, like a standard of quality. As example, in the 2007 recall, melamine was added to wheat gluten. It was still wheat gluten, and there was no standard of quality that said wheat gluten, any vegetable protein had to be 99% pure, okay? It had to be 99% vegetable protein at that time. So Congress went, that's a mistake. We need to have a standard of quality for all of these pet food ingredients so that we can hopefully prevent this from happening again. Congress told FDA they had to get this completed by September 2009. And guess what? FDA still has not completed this task.
Mm-hmm.
The label updates, at the end of 2016, they handed over to AFCO. So I am on those committees, updating labeling. However, as example, before we got started, I did a survey of consumers of what do you want? What do you want to see on labels? And gathered all that information, submitted it to this committee in advance. You know, supposedly this is all being done to benefit consumers. So to me, all of the consumer input should have been considered, you know, majority of it implemented.
Right.
And of course, they've taken little to nothing into consideration of what the consumer wants.
It is, you know, I've had different conversations with different people about a rating system, which I know will never happen. Where in Los Angeles, I'm not sure on big cities. I don't know how many big cities do this, but there's a rating system on restaurants, A, for the, you know, cleanliness and meets all standards, and then of course down to the D's and the F's. I would love there to be this for pet food, but of course the big pockets of these big brands, it'll never happen.
Well, that's like the health department inspecting the restaurants. And absolutely, I have asked for years that all inspection reports become public information.
Yeah.
Even if they don't grade them, That's fine. Just make the inspection reports public. When in 2012, when Diamond Pet Food had the massive salmonella recall, FDA made public the inspection report from that plant in South Carolina. The report said that some of the equipment was held together with duct tape and cardboard.
Oh gosh.
And consumers deserve to know conditions of the plant that they're purchasing pet food from. Evangers, the FDA inspection report from Evangers, FDA made it public. And, it was condensation dripping from the ceiling into open cans. It was dirty. They felt, that good manufacturing practices were not being followed within this plant. Well, had that been public information prior to, as well as the knowledge that the meats were not human grade as Evangers marketing claimed them to be, that instead they were sourced from a dead animal processor, consumers wouldn't have purchased the pet food, and very possibly the little dog Tallulah would still be alive. So we do deserve that. You're absolutely right in that we deserve transparency.
That's the problem. There's just none. I mean, the transparency is what's on the bag and these pretty pictures that are there that are all items that we would never want our dog to have, like the corn wheat, and that's right there. But it's so pretty and these lovely colors. Everything looks so great. How could it be bad for our dogs? And yet it is the worst thing. And I'm always shocked. No, nothing.
Well, pet food is a language all its own.
Yes.
You'll see on many, many products or in their advertising, and I'm just using this one example, made with real chicken. Well, real chicken means real pet food chicken.
Yeah.
The legal definition of chicken within pet food regulations is different than human chicken. Human chicken means USDA inspected and approved, and it means meat. If you bought a TV dinner and it said chicken, you would know that would be human consumption chicken and it would be meat.
Mm-hmm.
Pet food chicken can be USDA inspected meat, or it can be chicken skin and bones, little to no meat, or it can be USDA condemned chicken. All three of those are actually real chicken. They're real pet food chicken. In human food, every law that governs human food and like the understanding of what chicken is and what beef is and what carrots are, so forth, all of those definitions and laws, applicable laws, are public information. All of this very different language of pet food definitions and regulations are corporately owned by AAFCO. They are not public information. And it costs $100 a year for any consumer. If you wanted to know what chicken means, what beef meal means, what all of these ingredients in your pet's food means, you have no choice but to spend $100 to buy the book to understand what you're buying. And that's wrong. There is no transparency. Plus, pet food violates law. FDA openly, in each state, openly allows pet food to violate federal laws. There's 14 states that have state laws specific to pet food that the states openly ignore these laws. They enable companies to profit from selling an adulterated pet food. It's illegal. We estimate very conservatively that $4 million a day worth of illegal pet food every single day is sold in the U.S.
Jeez.
That should not be. So AFCO sets the stage by writing definitions and regulations that are kept away from the public, enabling these diseased animal material and non-slaughtered animal material as a pet food ingredient. The states and FDA enable them to make their billions of dollars by not enforcing law. And some people in legal circles call that collusion. And that's a very, very serious word with serious ramifications. And it's just something I'm going to push. You know, it's wrong. If they want to use the diseased and non-slaughtered animal material, I can't say I approve of it, but okay. But disclose that to the consumer. You know, no consumer would want to bring in any product into their home and expose their children or perhaps an immune-compromised individual in the home to a product that contains a diseased or non-slaughtered animal in there. It's just so wrong. So these are some of the obstacles that the consumers are up against. And unfortunately, this isn't all of it. This is just some.
Yeah, I'd say this is probably the whipped cream and maybe the cherry.
Yeah.
Sadly enough.
Analogy. I like that.
I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all the people that are on this show that do anything to do with nutrition. And I love this question because I get all kinds of interesting answers. Now, when you go out to a big box store, you go to the grocery store, wherever, and you pass the dog food aisle and you see somebody with a bag of garbage dog food, do you ever stand on your little soapbox, like I do, and not belittle? Because that's the misconception. It's never belittle, but do you ever just have this, do you know what's in this dog food? Let me explain to you. Let's read the ingredients together, and I'll explain it to you kind of moment, or do you just kind of leave it to the website?
Absolutely. I have, and I've gotten mixed reviews. Some people are insulted. They take it as an insult that I'm saying, you think I would feed my dog bad food? You know, so it's a slippery slope. A pet owner shared with me, I think, the perfect way to do this. She was in like a Sam's Club or a Costco, and she saw a pet owner pull off a big, huge bag of cat food, one of those cat foods. Mm-hmm. And she pulled out a $5 bill out of her wallet. And she walked over to him and said, I will give you this $5 bill if you don't buy that pet food. And that changed the atmosphere. It changed the dynamic of the conversation. And because it was $5, then the consumer went, well, she must be really serious, so I need to listen to this as to why. And she said, she talked to him, shared her knowledge. The consumer put the pet food back and did not buy it. So I've not had that opportunity because I've had so many people that felt like I was insulting them. I tend to not do that so much anymore. If I see a consumer, struggling, reading all the labels and trying to figure out what it is they should buy, then I do. But if I see it already in their cart, then I tend to just try to keep my mouth shut. It's not easy. I have bloody lips from biting my lip.
It's funny. I say this a lot, but my wife will look at me and say, just let it go. They'll learn. I do find it's a little bit easier when I'm down that aisle and have my daughter with me because I'm not so threatening. And that's kind of the moment. Like some people, because I'm a tall guy, and people will always say, "Oh, can you do me a favor and reach that on whatever top shelf?" Of course I can, no big deal. But then it's perfect opportunity to say, well, this product is really not good, and let me explain why. And even my daughter, who is just barely 9 years old, is become almost an advocate in her sense. She knows. And it's almost, I don't know if I'm doing right or wrong here. I'm kind of in the middle where she's just like, that's terrible dog food. That's terrible cat food. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing right, but you know what? I'm going to go with it. Because at least she's starting to see it.
You give her a hug for me. Absolutely.
I haven't actually told the story on the podcast yet. It happened last week. We do a pantry for people who actually need help for dog and cat food, and all the food is donated. So of course you're not going to get the top products out there, but obviously any food, and I will stand on this one. Any food is better than no food for a dog or a cat. And we had helpers at the event, and then again, all the food is donated. And I would love to get good dog brands and cat brands to start donating. But a lot of people will come over. Oh, well, we like this product, and I will immediately say, no, let's do a better brand. And there is a sliding scale. There is, but we had helpers last week, and those helpers. I was standing there in this area with this bunch of food, and I'm reading off ingredients to all of these guys, and they're all doing community service. They all had dogs of their own, and by the end of that day, none of them wanted to touch that product. I was just like, look, this is why this is a bad thing. I said, go down when you're at Walmart or you're in the grocery store, go down the aisle and just start reading dog products. Read the ingredients that are there. And he looked at me at the beginning like, you're a weirdo. But by the end of that couple hours that we were there handing out food, they were like, I'll never touch that again. And they were going to my wife going, was he serious? Is he just messing with us? And she goes, no, he's serious. And it's like there's my soapbox moment where I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, and I'm not going to tell you how you're poisoning your pet. I'm just going to give you the information and say, now go in and do some research. Your phone has something called the internet. You can look at it anywhere, anytime. Go and enjoy yourself, because you'll spend the rest of your life reading this stuff. And again, I understand cost, it is expensive out there, and it's not like the economy has gotten much better. So I understand, some people just cannot afford the high-end product, but there is that sliding scale that can help them. They don't have to rely on the garbage. And some people...
Well, if they can't afford, say a human-grade pet food,
right?
Then they can feed the best commercial they can afford, and take a third of that away and make the other third people food, which is cheaper. And like for dogs, that third of people food you're going to add, you need to look to see the few foods that you cannot give cats or dogs. But for a dog, of that third, make 1/3 of that a meat and 2/3 of it vegetables. And for a cat, make that 1/3 all meat.
Yes.
And that little bit of real food added to their commercial food is going to make dramatic difference.
Oh, it does. Oh, it does.
Yeah.
It's a complete, and again, our phones, they all, and what's great is that everybody who's listening to the podcast, they might be listening on a phone right now. That phone has internet, obviously. You can go and Google recipes, really good recipes, to make your dog or cat food that's actually going to be nourishable, and it's nourishing, and it's going to actually be healthy. And that's what it probably will cost the same as your garbage dog or cat food. It shocks me. It completely shocks me. Again, here I am on my soapbox, and again, I get all the people who have been on the podcast and have later become friends through it. They all make fun of me because they use the word soapbox, but it's not a belittling. It's a, hey, look, we can do this, and we can make that change, and here is how. So
that's right.
I love this conversation because everybody changes. Everybody has a different outlook, and I love hearing outlooks. And They may not be the way I would approach it, but I love them. And that's what makes so much of a difference for me. Well,
That's awesome. Yes.
now my next thing that I'm dying to hear about, and you know where I'm going, is last week you went to Washington, D.C. I read an article about it, so I'm a little bit caught up, but I want to hear it from you and what happened from beginning to end. What was that about? What happened? Just tell the story, please.
It was wonderful. Myself, a lawyer from New York City who has just offered me at no charge, you know, consulting, you know, any kind of problems I had. If the pet food company gave me problems, she would help. And Dr. Karen Becker. We all went on our own dimes. And the first day we had meetings with Senator Richard Durbin's office, who Senator Durbin for years he's from Illinois, he has stood up for pet food consumers time and time again. So they were willing, and it's not the senator that we met with, but his staff. And staffers, we learned, this was the first time any of us had ever done anything like this, and we learned that staffers are not there to give you any feedback, to let you know that something can be corrected or not. It is basically just to take notes and give feedback back to the senator, you know, and to see if anything can be done. So, you know, we were kind of disappointed. We were hoping that we would get oh, this is horrible. Yes, we'll help you. But that isn't how it works. But it was still good. We gave them information that none of them were aware of. The second meeting we had on the first day was two senators, their staff from the Senate Agriculture Committee, which obviously are over a lot of agriculture products, including pet food. So it was interesting, one of the staffers was a veterinarian, and she was an American Veterinary Medical Association intern. AVMA sends a few veterinarians a year to Washington, D.C. on an internship to learn how the legal system works in agriculture. So we were thrilled that it was a veterinarian, hopeful that, especially like Dr. Becker, could speak veterinarian to veterinarian. But again, we run into that same situation where they are not there to give us any feedback, they can't tell us, oh yes, we can help you, or no, we can't. They can't do that. So it was still a great deal of information that I'm confident they did not have, because we're dotting every I and crossing every T. We provided evidence to everything we presented to them. So, you know, afterwards, we realized we did awesome. You know, we did exactly what we wanted to do, was to bring awareness to lawmakers of what consumers are facing, and it's tough what consumers are facing. The next day, we did get a TV interview in the morning. The ABC station in Washington, D.C. Had us come to their studio and interviewed Dr. Becker and myself that morning, and then we went to FDA. And surprisingly enough, FDA was extremely open. To start off this meeting, the pug owner from the Avengers situation, that the pug died, she was on a conference call. She could not come. It was too much money for her to fly all the way from Washington State to D.C. So they arranged a conference call, and she was very emotional, justifiably so. She's telling her story and basically begging FDA to make changes, that her dog shouldn't have had to die, that if she would have known what she was buying, she would have never have purchased a pet food made from meat sourced from a dead animal processor. Never. And thus she wouldn't have purchased it, and thus her pet would still be alive. As emotions kind of got, escalated, Dr. McChesney of FDA said, well, what do you all want? And we want transparency. Consumers are worn out. We're tired of asking for you all to do the right thing by consumers. We need something to change. And right here, right now, today. What do you suggest? So we made the suggestion that if a pet food, which most of them do not meet the legal requirements of food, then they shouldn't be called a food. If they do not meet the legal requirement of food, they are a feed. Most of them are a feed. Then it should be called dog feed and cat feed. Much to our shock at the time, they said, okay, I think that's fair. I think we can make that happen. Dr. Becker spoke up and said, okay, what about, there is this big gaping hole in the definition of human grade pet foods for raw pet foods. Raw pet foods, the ones that are made in a USDA facility under USDA inspection, meet every requirement of a human grade food, but humans don't eat raw meat. And USDA won't come to AFCO meetings and negotiate this out. So raw pet foods are kind of left in the dark. And then there are other pet foods who are using every single ingredient is human grade. They're not just claiming it, as Avengers claimed it. They are. And so except they're made like in a pet food manufacturing facility, which again does not meet the legal requirement of human grade or food. So Dr. Becker suggested that there be a system set up similar to the USDA's grading of meat. Meat providers can pay a fee to the USDA to have the meat graded as whatever USDA deems it to be, prime or choice or grade A. That is a fee-based system, and ultimately the higher the ranking of the meat, the more it can sell for. It's a higher quality. So these pet foods, she suggested, can't we do the same thing with pet foods that are all human grade ingredients, but they don't quite meet the legal definition of food? These companies can pay a fee, to FDA, have the FDA verify that all the information is correct, that all the ingredients are human grade, are food. Then those pet foods could also be called food. And again, much to our surprise, they said, yeah, we like this idea. I think we can work this out. They waffled. I asked them, okay, time frame. And they waffled on that one. Oh, this is going to take a while. And I said, no. Consumers have waited long enough. This can't take a while. You can't do that to consumers. Industry will delay this for a decade.
Right.
That's not fair. We've got to work on this. And their suggestion was to present it to AFCO at the next meeting, which is in the Seattle area in August. And FDA, I'm still working on this addendum to a legal document that I submitted to FDA in October of last year, a citizen petition. And I'm going to make these things, the food and feed and the grading system, an addendum to that document. And FDA will present this to AAFCO at this meeting in August. Less than 2 months away, which is mind-boggling. Now, I'm confident that it will be stalled through the AAFCO process because of industry, but this is where we're going to need every consumer, everyone, to write their letters, sign a petition, make a few phone calls to make this happen. And all of this will be happening. I'll send these things out from my website before August, because I want to drop on the table to them 1 million signatures. And I'm not kidding. I want 1 million signatures that consumers are in favor of this, because it's honest. There's a section of federal law, the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, that says, and I can pull this up right here real quick, that says, in prescribing a definition and standard of identity for any food or class of food in which optional ingredients are permitted, the Secretary shall, for the purpose of promoting honesty and fair dealing in the interest of consumers, designate the optional ingredients which shall be named on the label. This is exactly what we are dealing with. The FDA and State Department of Agriculture allows feed-grade ingredients. Those are the optional ingredients. And consumers, per federal law, in promoting, quote, honesty and fair dealing in the interest of consumers, we need those feed-grade ingredients or feed-grade final product designated on the label. And so law is behind us. Absolutely, law is behind us. And our goal is to push the law forward to get this disclosure. It was amazing. But at the same time, we have a lot of work in front of us, a lot, to make it happen. But this is then it's gonna fall into the hands of consumers. We need consumers to rally behind this and be very vocal and very loud. We want this. Imagine walking into a pet food store and part of the products are dog feed and cat feed, and the other part of the products are dog food and cat food. That's significant.
I would love to
Very
see that.
Significant. Yeah, it would. It's that's the thing. We're not asking for the moon.
Right.
We're just asking for transparency, and transparency per federal law that we deserve.
It's like I'm drawn back to the '90s when I was a young kid, and I remember how cigarettes, they wanted to put the skull and crossbones on a pack of cigarettes that would identify, harmful and everything else. And I wasn't against it. I wasn't against it at all. I thought, well, hey, that's probably a good thing for people. If you smoke, you should probably know. I mean, yes, the ingredients are right there. And the ingredients are right there on dog food. I mean, they're really, it's the same story, just now a whole different, category. I still believe that there are countless numbers of people who would buy dog feed. And I mean, that's just, kind of sad. That's laziness.
Well, if they can't afford it,
that I accept.
That's where, should the FDA and all the states flip a switch and have a conscience and suddenly go, all this waste, illegal waste, we need to start enforcing law. Mm-hmm. Well, animals in shelters they couldn't afford a food.
Right.
If they changed it in livestock feed, because the same thing goes in livestock feed, the same illegal ingredients, the price of meat would skyrocket. And a lot of factory farms of, chickens, cattle, pigs, they would not be able to afford them a legal animal feed. So, and we told the FDA, look, we are not wanting to come in and destroy companies, financially destroy companies that either sell these ingredients or sell the products including these ingredients. That's not our agenda. Our agenda is disclosure to the consumer.
Right.
Just let the consumer know. And FDA was on board. So we'll see if they can sell this idea and we can sell this idea to AAFCO in the midst of probably very ugly screaming and yelling from industry. This will be a very interesting AAFCO meeting for sure. But we'll see. So it'll happen in less than 2 months.
As much as the big pet companies don't have that quote unquote vote, they still have the voice. And that voice is so much more powerful. And that voice is of the dollars that they're throwing at everything. I don't understand why they're allowed to be board members. That drives me insane. I can't imagine why they're allowed to be. Yes, you can be participants. Board members, I'm sorry, that's something that...
No, their industry is not on board of directors. They are no more, it's all regulatory of AAFCO. It's all regulatory people, State Department of Agriculture people, that's the board of directors. They are advisors to committees just like I am. Okay? Now, and it's interesting, and I learned this the hard way. No one at AAFCO would let me be on these committees, let me be an advisor. And one year, a president that was a couple years out of being a president, we were walking down a hallway, and I said, they're still not letting me be an advisor. And he kind of leaned over and said, I'm going to tell you something. They can't let a blogger, they considered me a blogger. They can't let a blogger be an advisor. It has to be a stakeholder. Stakeholder organizations are like these trade associations. And so that's when I started Association for Truth in Pet Food. So that consumers then became a stakeholder group. And then they had no choice. We are no different than a lobby group, AFI and PFI. We are a lobby group, sort of, kind of, for consumers. And so then they had to. And yes, government as a whole, even AAFCO, which is non-government, but they take into consideration feedback from stakeholder groups. And that's where, for this, we have to get massive amounts of support for this from our stakeholders, consumers. Where, 100 pet food companies might say, we don't like this. But if we have 1 million signatures on a petition that says, we want this, that's pretty powerful, and it's going to be very hard for AAFCO to deny.
Gotcha.
That's hope, at least. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. When you look at the AAFCO website itself, it looks like it actually says board members. That's what caught my attention. I'm like, why are these guys board members? And you see every one of the big pet food companies that are part of it. So, okay, that actually clarifies that for me. And again, why I love talking with people like you is that you're educating me and I'm able to learn as I'm going here, because it does weird how it classifies everything. And you really do have that feeling, but they still have a voice, and that voice is still, unfortunately, keeping things, regulations to somewhat uneven to their benefit, though. That's the part
there's more trade associations. There's more of them. There are only myself and Molly Morissette, and Molly can't always because she can't afford it. We volunteer for a living.
Right.
There's just her and I that are official stakeholder, consumer stakeholder representatives. And so when Molly can't make it to the meetings, I'm it. and versus multiple. There's the Rendering Association, AFIA. There's another grain trade association, the PFI. There's multiple trade associations on the other side of the table. So, that's tough that's where, and I begged, we do now have a trade association for the quality-minded manufacturers. And we don't 100% agree. We're not 100% together because I'm representing consumers and she's representing manufacturers. But a lot of our issues are very similar because we want transparency. We don't want all of them to look alike because they're not all alike,
right?
On a shelf. So that has helped, but we need Holistic Veterinary Association to be at these meetings. I would love to see a trade association put together of independent pet food stores, as many different ones that we can get, but it has to be a stakeholder group. They can't come in and allow, just like they couldn't allow that crazy blogger, Susan Thixton, to come in and be an advisor. They had to take me, ultimately, when I was a stakeholder. So we need more stakeholder groups on our side. And that would help, it would be more voices that they accept that. So I'm always trying to get more people to go to AFCO and get involved. It's very expensive. It costs $500 just to walk in the door.
Oh gosh.
Plus travel expenses, hotel. The hotel where it's at this time is $225 a night. And plus the $500 plus airfare. It's a lot of money to go to AFCO meetings. It's hard. It's not a piece of cake to do that. So that's why a lot of people don't go. I even asked AFCO, Nikki, the pug owner with the Evanser's deal, asked me if she could address AFCO. And so I made the request several months ago for her if she could address the Enforcement Committee, which is the committee of AFCO, State Department of Agriculture people, that deals with enforcement issues, which Evanser's certainly was. They told me no, they don't have time.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, and then I told her back. I said, that's just so unfortunate that AFCO just doesn't have time for consumers. Good to know.
Yeah,
they
right.
Don't have time for us. So, I have asked them years ago to make 2 hours at every meeting free for a consumer to come in and have that room with a panel of State Department of Agriculture people and a panel of FDA people. And force these people to sit face to face across from a consumer. And you hear their story. I hear their stories all the time. That's why I'm here, and you all think it's just me complaining. But I want you to hear it from them. And, they patted me on the head and, good little girl, that's a great idea, but they've never done it.
Wow.
So, it's hard. And so what consumer can afford to pay $1,000 to, depending on if they have to fly in or something, to $1,800 to attend an AFCO meeting. And it takes several under your belt to really understand how the process works and when you can speak and who to speak to, and it's just a shame. And again, that's another incident of inhuman food regulations when these laws are being developed, which is exactly what AFCO is. Those kind of meetings are public. Anyone who wishes to go in and sit through all in favor say aye, they can. But AFCO is different. AFCO charges you $500 to sit in the room and listen to all in favor say aye.
Wow. I mean, and the one reason why I really wanted to talk to you is because there's so little I understand about this that's what makes it so interesting for me to hear it from you. Because again, none of us really know unless we've sat down and done what you've done, or really just been able to study it. It's such a different world, and an unbelievable different world.
It is. It's a whole different language.
Yeah.
But to me, regulatory is what it's all about. It's all about regulations and enforcement of regulations. Until you know what the regulations are, what a pet food label is supposed to tell you, what they should not do, you're just trusting an industry that not all of them deserve our trust. So to me, for a consumer to understand what all the regulations are, what with chicken means versus chicken flavored, all those things mean is significantly important. Because then also, if you find a violation, then you can pick up the phone and call your own state Department of Agriculture and go, hey, this label just lied to me. What are you going to do about it? We can have more accountability in the industry if consumers were more aware of the laws.
Right.
But getting that information out there is easier said than done.
And see, that's kind of, you have the websites that, I want to talk about next, and that's what's helped, getting this information out there. Now, I know of tapf.com, which is truthaboutpetfood.com. What other websites are you operating so that people like me who are interested in reading about this stuff on a daily, and I've gone over your website, and there was a lot of different things that you had written about that I was just like, ooh, I want to click on this one. I want to read more on this. So people like me, and I'm hoping, again, people who are listening to the podcast are also thinking the same thing. Well, I want to know more. I want to learn more. Let's talk about, again, TAPF and everything else.
Well, truthaboutpetfood.com, and you've got to make sure it's .com, and don't add a the to it, because the PFI, the Trade Association for Big Pet Food, purchased the domains truthaboutpetfood.org and .net. And so if somebody types it in and forgets that last part, they'll be taken to the PFI website.
Now, did they do that just to kind of, block you a little bit?
Just steal traffic.
Yeah.
Try to mislead consumers is what they're doing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
That truthaboutpetfood.com is the major website with there's thousands and thousands of articles on there, 10 years worth of articles, giving consumers a great deal of knowledge, understanding what the ingredients are, understanding the regulations, reports from AFCO meetings of what went on. There's just so much there. We also have Association for Truth in Pet Food, which that is our consumer trade, our consumer stakeholder organization. Association for Truth in Petfood.com. I don't have time, unfortunately. I'd like to write more on the association website, but there's only one of me.
Right.
And there's only so many hours in a day, so I don't get time to put things on that website that I'd like. Some of the things that AFCO does allow me to share, I can only share on the association website. You become a member, you set up a password and username, and that enables you to have access to some of this private information that I am not allowed to share with all consumers. And if consumers become a member of the association, that truly helps me to get to regulatory meetings. That's how I pay for it. That, and I have a couple of products that I sell. I am 100% completely consumer supported. I do not take money from any pet food company. I had a pet food company purchase my list, and it was a company that was on the list. Each year I produce a document called the list, and it's a list of pet foods that I personally would trust to feed my own pets. And this document is how I keep a roof over my head and my computer on. And so this pet food company was just being nice, and they purchased 10 copies. I offer it at multiple prices. They purchased 10 copies at the highest price, and I refunded their money back. And I called them and said, I'm sorry, I have to refund your money back. I can't take money from a pet food company. And nobody would have known. I didn't have to do that, but I have to look at myself in the mirror, and I don't do that. I represent consumers and only consumers, so I don't want to muddy the waters any in the least. But it was appreciated, but it's just something I don't and can't do. So for consumers, if they have enjoyed this and have learned from it and learned from my website, please do support the cause, because I'm solely supported by consumers and always appreciate any help.
And I'll have all of that in the description page as well. So that will definitely go in there. Yeah, in the description page, it will be all about website and different ways of being able to get involved and help you out and so on and so on.
Okay.
In the last few minutes of our conversation, which I have a feeling we're going to end up putting a bookmark in, we'll talk again, because so much goes on, and you know what, I've said it from the very beginning. I love learning from everybody, because I come in here, I learn what I can, and I get to listen to you guys. And this is a topic I am completely just learning as I go. But one of my things that I really have to kind of toss into a question mark, and something that I've found was it deserves its praise, and I always like to hear your opinions on it. But this year, especially since the release of the movie Pet Food, I've noticed that there has been a lot more recalls since that movie's release. Do you see the fact that they coincide, or is it just coincidence, do you think?
I think it's coincidence. FDA and State Department of Agriculture have had a vendetta against raw pet food for the last couple of years. And literally, to me, it is a vendetta. They have tested raw pet foods and not kibble as much as they used to for harmful bacteria. It's Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria. Those can be very dangerous bacteria. Basically, that is a concern. However, the scrutiny of those bacteria in products that humans handle needs to be even. They need to scrutinize each category of pet food equally. And from what I'm seeing over the past several years, they are not. I can tell you that regulatory, both at a federal level and the state level, have not followed by their own rules in muscling raw pet food manufacturers to recall. And I can't tell you any more than that, but I can tell you with certainty they have not played fair.
No.
They've violated their own protocols. And thankfully, companies have learned, sometimes the hard way. of the sneaky behavior by regulatory and are learning how to advocate for themselves in these types of situations and fight back. And again, Salmonella, E. coli, that could kill a child.
Oh, yeah.
It could kill an immune-compromised person. But scrutiny should be equal. It should be equal in all products, and it has not been.
I see.
It most definitely has not been.
I see salmonella, recall for this kibble because of salmonella. I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's ridiculous. But then I look and I go, Raw Diet. Now we had the owner of Darwin's on, and I became more and more invested in Raw Diet for so many different reasons. But I look at it and I go, it's safe. When I look at the kibble, it's not safe. I could look at okay, well, they found metal fragments in the kibble, so there's a voluntary recall. Yeah, machines are going to have that issue. Okay, I'm going to be a little bit less pointing the finger. But when I see euthanasia, an actual agent for euthanasia, or I see salmonella, I saw just recently with the actual beef sticks for the last couple of weeks where they actually expanded it because they used an ammonia in different plants in Colombia, Mexico, and a limited one in Brazil. I look at that and I go, well, there's your common thing right there. That's violations. And I don't get it. I'm like, there's no way that these big pet food companies are like, oh yeah, let's bury Raw Diet and say salmonella when they're the ones that have it happening to them almost on a monthly basis.
Statistically, there have been millions of pounds of kibble recalled for harmful bacteria compared to thousands, hundreds, maybe 100,000 pounds of raw.
Right.
So which product has the potential to harm more people?
Yeah.
Of course it's kibble.
Yeah.
Raw pet food at most is only 2% of the market.
Yes.
So why test only 2% of the market when the other 98 could sicken more people, many more people? It makes no sense. The only explanation is a vendetta.
Yeah.
Regulatory people, I can tell you, they don't really like raw pet food. They don't like human grade. It's like, that's not pet food. That's not, and they didn't like having to define human grade. They didn't like having to acknowledge it. And Honest Kitchen forced them many years ago. You do have to acknowledge it. We're going to make you. Took it to court and they won. So, but we didn't get into this situation. It circles back to, we didn't get into this situation overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. But with awareness, consumer awareness, and that's the amazing thing that PetFool did was bring awareness. I've received emails from people from all over the world, as far away as South Africa, that have seen the film. And they find me and go, please help. And, there's only so much I can do. I don't know regulations in the country, but people from all over the world. It's amazing. I so hope Cole does another one. I think he is, but I really hope he does, because it has been well received.
Yeah, he's very busy, so I have no idea. As far as I know, I have no idea on that one, but I do know that when I saw it, I had already been advocating for nutrition I'd been doing this podcast for 3 years. So it wasn't something new, but it was something that I was like, wow, these are things I didn't know anything about. And as I've gone on and on and on, I'm going, oh wow, keep going down this rabbit hole. The one thing I will ask on the whole consumer thing, when you were saying just a minute ago, I always wonder, do they look at the whole human grade with with the dogs? I always wonder, are they the type of people, and I face this issue in the Midwest, so this is why I address it more here. Do they look at dogs and they look at them as just property?
Do you mean regulatory people?
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah. Do they just look at them as property?
No, I don't think so. They say to me, we're pet owners too. We're pet owners too. No, I don't think so. But they are of a pet food is feed mindset. That is their mindset, that it is not food, it is feed. And so when human grade came in, for one, if you think about it from a regulatory perspective, these are State Department of Agriculture people, on a state level. Their job is solely feed. They have no control, authority, involvement with the human food side of things. Human food manufacturing is regulated by either USDA or FDA on a federal level. Like a restaurant is human food. Smaller manufacturing is human food. Those are regulated for the most part by like the health department, making sure they're clean and things like that. So it's a whole different regulatory body that deals with human food.
Right.
When pet food started to come in as human grade, the regulatory people are going, the human food, this isn't our territory. We don't know what to do. So they balked at it because it was such unfamiliar turf and not their typical, under their typical authority. And they're learning as they go along too. So it's a shift in attitude that we have to get our regulators involved in as well.
Right.
Just the same way when you go into that pet store and you see somebody questioning what to buy, and they don't know, regulatory in a different way, they don't know either. They didn't understand human grade pet food because it's all feed,
Wow.
Or it was. So, but I don't think they're property people. I think a lot of them, I ask a lot of them, what do you give your dog? What pet food do you give your dog? And none of them will tell me. I try to get it out of them just out of curiosity, but they won't tell me. So.
Well, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I mean, you have educated me. I mean, I still feel like there's so much I don't know, but at least I think I have a better understanding now that I was able to talk to you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Good.
Well, again, I'm going to put a bookmark in this one. I do hope to actually hear back from you and learn a little bit more.
No problem. We'll do it again.
Thank you, Susan, for being on the podcast. What did I tell you, everybody? She is so intelligent and has so much information that you just completely sit at the edge of your seat listening and almost talking to yourself. I mean, as I'm talking to her, I'm nearly talking to myself out loud going, I can't believe this. And, I'm not exactly fully knowledgeable on what goes on in AFCO. And I'm very open to say I learned a lot from her. And even at that, I even told her afterwards, I still don't really have any idea what goes on with it. And, that's the real hardship of being a pet parent and being an advocate for pet health and nutrition is that you tend to want to read and then read some more and then read some more after that. And you still feel at the end sometimes, and especially in this topic, that you don't have all the information, and that drives me nuts. And that's where I come to another part of something that's asked a lot, and that is, well, how do I get involved in things? I don't have the time to be able to volunteer for a nonprofit. My apartment or house, I can't have pets. Maybe my significant other is allergic to a dog, because, there's definitely a lot of allergies with dogs and cats. So what do? I'm kind of stuck and I want to be part of it. Well, there's a lot of different ways. You can always support nonprofit organizations, or here's a great example. Here Susan has the Association for TruthInPetFood.com, where you can actually be part of it by donating, getting more information from her. And it's kind of simple. Be a part of the team that is changing the future of pet food. And she's one of them, as you can see. You can simply donate monthly support of $10, which is nothing. I mean, you think about, I think it's the ASPCA, where it's $19 a day, or $19 a month, where, you can give that money to them. And yes, they do amazing work. I look at somebody like this and I advocate go with people like this, because you can see she's traveling around the country. She is paying attention to everything going on, taking notes, giving it out to all of us, just the consumer. I mean, I'm just like you guys. I'm just a consumer who has no idea most of the time what's going on. And then I have to read about it, talk to these people, and I find out, oh, okay, now I'm starting to learn a little bit more. And that's where I'm just always appalled that, again, back to my soapbox moment, and that is, I can see somebody walking through a supermarket or big box store, pushing a great big basket of food with all the top products, except the dog food. There's a 80-pound bag of crap in their basket, and they don't think anything of it. I just wish we had devices that we carried with us every day that had internet, that we could go online and read this stuff when we're in the bathroom or anywhere else, or on the subway, or riding the bus, or while we're on break or lunch. I just wish we had a phone. Oh wait, we do. It's in front of us. And we're probably listening to this podcast on one of them. I can't stress enough the value of people like Susan, Dr. Becker, Cole Harrington, any one of these people who are out there giving all this information and doing it really for nothing. It gets me, and I'm so proud of them and so grateful to be able to talk to them and then put it together for an episode for all of you. Well, let me do one last thing before I say goodbye for the week. I will be doing a mass Q&A this week, starting this week. It will be all throughout social media on pet pages from one to another, where I will post. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions, talk about your pet, talk about this episode, because that's what it's all about. It's opening that conversation dialogue and being able to go back and forth. So on Wednesday, I don't know what time because it is a busy world, but on Wednesday I will be posting it out there. And of course, just like any other Facebook post, they just kind of sit there. So feel free, whether it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, even Saturday of next week, comment on it. Say if you like the episode, and we'll have that discussion, because it has become imperative to me that these discussions with you guys are the most important. And we've had them recently, which I've enjoyed. And I've enjoyed the ability to be able to talk to you guys. And you kind of have found out that this podcast is just a way of us all being able to get together and go back and forth. So for that, I'm Chris Green. Have a pet-tastic week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, guys.